So I want to pause here and I want to have time for some questions. Let me see. I know we had a question about heat to heat applications, so maybe we'll start there. I would just toss this over right to the RTC folks. There was a question about what about the thermal batteries and heat to heat applications? Do you think that would be comparable to the power to heat applications?
The problem is that it's to some extent it's going to depend on how abundant and cheap that heat source is. I think the key that there will be sort of challenges with some replicating some of the low cost the opportunities from low cost electricity inputs in that case. And if you're not, say, drawing from waste heat and other sort of cheaper sources of heat, it might not be as economical as electricity in its own right. But again, that also depends on how you're sourcing the electricity and a whole other host of factors.
It's if you're bringing a different source of heat, there's a pretty different engineering and design element to that. And our analysis was pretty specific to power to heat.
Christoph, who's had his hand up and has been waiting patiently, asks, which latent thermal storage companies did you look at, and is there a list to look through? And maybe Michael or Chris, if you've got any comments there. And then I think I'd also ask Ben from Roland Berger if he's got any comments.
We're looking exclusively, as I mentioned at the beginning of our presentation, at sensible thermal storage, in part because of the focus on industrial application. Well, not just the exclusive focus on industrial applications, but just what we're seeing in the U.S. market in terms of increasing what's commercially available that's focused on industrial sectors at the moment, and that's particularly dominated by sensible at the time, and also just also reflects the current sort of makeup of the RTC.
Benjamin Lowe with Roland Berger. Really just echoing previous comments on where RTC looked. Actually, this was a paper done for and on behalf of the LDIS Council and its members. And so those were really the predominant technologies that we saw.
What are the environmental impacts of long duration energy storage technologies during their entire life cycle, including manufacturing, operation, and disposal? And then there's a follow-up question. What are the barriers to the market penetration of long duration energy storage, and how can they be overcome?
Can't really answer the life cycle emissions answer in the kind of 6 minutes that we have. But I think for adopters or catalysts for driving LDES technology growth, a lot of it really comes down to markets and price signals as well as supply chains. And so, as we kind of think about markets rewarding and compensating these technologies for, this kind of plus 4 hour capacity value, I think will be very important. And then finally, in terms of just, broader adoption, I think it's twofold. I mentioned supply chains earlier, but then also I think that, I think it's learning the lesson and appreciating the lesson that, lithium ion is not necessarily the silver bullet we expect it to be. And that, there are a lot of challenges there in terms of, resiliency, charging limits, and things like that. So, very interesting in terms of how things will shake out as more renewables, penetrate markets here.